Hospitals are strange places. During the day, they're filled with noise, nurses rushing, carts rattling, the smell of antiseptic clinging to everything. But at night, everything changes. The chaos fades, and that's when you notice the things you weren't meant to. It's in the flickering lights that never get fixed, the empty rooms that stay cold, no matter how warm the rest of the building is. And sometimes, it's in the silence that presses down on you, as if the building itself is holding its breath. Hospitals, I've learned, aren't haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by the things people leave behind, their pain, their fear, and sometimes things much worse. I worked as a security guard at a hospital for 3 years. It wasn't a bad job, but it wasn't easy either. Most nights were simple. Cameras, empty hallways, and bad coffee. The kind of job where you could put in your hours, go home, and forget about it. But not this night. Some nights you see things you can't explain, things that stay with you long after your shift ends. This story, it's one of those nights. It was a Tuesday, and I'd already worked a full shift directing traffic outside the hospital. Construction had blocked the main entrance, forcing me to spend most of the day in freezing cold weather, waving cars through temporary lanes while drivers honked and cursed like I was the reason for their delays. By the time my shift ended, my back ached, and all I wanted was to go home, sink into the couch, and let bad TV numb my brain. But Barry, my supervisor, had other plans. "Tony," he said, leaning back in his chair like this wasn't a big deal. "Randall called out sick. I've got no one to cover the night shift." I hesitated. I should have said no. My body was screaming for rest, and I knew I wasn't in any shape to stay alert for another 8 hours. But Barry had helped me out before, covered for me when I was late, swapped shifts when I needed time off. I owed him. I sighed, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on me. "Fine, but you owe me." He grinned. "Quiet night," he said. "You'll be fine." By midnight, the hospital had transformed. The chaos of the day had drained away, leaving the halls hollow and still. The emergency room, which had been packed earlier, now felt like a ghost town. A few nurses murmured quietly at the desk, their voices barely breaking the silence. Upstairs, the ICU was eerily calm, the steady beeping of machines the only sign of life. I grabbed a cup of coffee from the break room and settled into the security office. The room was cramped, the walls lined with shelves of outdated equipment and dusty manuals that nobody ever touched. In front of me, a bank of monitors displayed live camera feeds from every corner of the hospital. One by one, the screens cycled through the same images. Empty hallways, dim waiting rooms, flickering lights. But something about the night felt off. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes. The coffee was doing little to keep me awake, and the constant hum of the monitors was starting to lull me into a foggy haze. I was about to give in and let my eyes close for just a moment when something caught my attention on the screen. A shadow moved across the monitor, showing the hallway outside the morgue. It was quick, just a flicker of movement at the edge of the frame. I sat up, squinting at the screen as I rewound the footage. But when I played it back, the shadow wasn't there. Just an empty hallway, buzzing under flickering fluorescent lights. I told myself it was a glitch, a trick of the light, or a lag in the feed, but my gut told me otherwise. At 2:30 a.m., the phone rang, shattering the silence. I grabbed the receiver, my fingers cold against the plastic. "Security," I said, my voice rough from lack of sleep. Barry's voice came through the line, scratchy and half asleep. "Tony, we got a door sensor alert in the morgue. Probably nothing, but can you check it out?" The morgue. Just hearing the word sent a chill down my spine. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to sound calm. "Yeah, I'm on it." The elevator ride to the basement felt longer than usual. When the doors finally opened with a faint chime, I stepped into the hallway and immediately felt the temperature drop. The air down here was different, colder, heavier, like the walls themselves were closing in. The smell of bleach mixed with something metallic like rusted metal or old blood clung to the air. My boots echoed softly on the tile as I made my way toward the morgue. Each step felt like it took more effort than the last, as if the floor was trying to hold me back. The morgue doors loomed ahead, their small frosted windows giving me only a vague glimpse of the room beyond. I swiped my keycard, and the lock clicked open. The cold hit me like a punch to the chest, sharp and biting. My breath fogged as I exhaled, and for a moment I considered turning around and calling it in as a false alarm. But I knew Barry would ask questions, so I stepped inside. Rows of steel drawers lined the walls, their surfaces reflecting the harsh fluorescent light overhead. In the center of the room, 4 gurneys stood in a neat row. I frowned. There were only supposed to be 3. The 4th gurney sat slightly off to the side, its wheels turned at an odd angle. The body on it was zipped up in a black bag, identical to the others. But when I checked the logbook on the counter, the 4th body wasn't listed. I stared at the gurney, my pulse quickening. Maybe it was a mistake, a late arrival that hadn't been logged, or maybe someone had moved it and forgotten to update the records. But the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. The bag shifted. It was small at first, just a twitch, like something shifting inside. I told myself it was nothing, just the cold air causing the plastic to settle. But then the zipper moved. Slow, deliberate. The sound of the metal teeth sliding apart was soft at first, barely noticeable over the hum of the fluorescent lights. But as the zipper slid further down, the sound grew louder, like someone was pulling it from the inside. I took a step back, my breath shallow. My flashlight flickered over the gap in the bag, now wide enough to reveal the pale, motionless skin of the body inside. The chest was partially exposed, rising and falling ever so slightly, as if it were breathing. No, that's impossible. I leaned in closer, squinting into the gap. The body's head was turned slightly away from me, the top of its face obscured by the black plastic. But its lips were visible, cracked, dry, and slightly parted. Then they moved. A soft exhale escaped the bag, fogging the cold air. My stomach dropped, and I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. The zipper slid further down, and the head shifted, turning slowly toward me. The mouth twitched, and for a split second, I saw one hollow, sunken eye staring back at me. The eye blinked.
Tony!
The whisper was faint, like a breath carried on the wind, but it sent a chill down my spine. My legs finally obeyed me, and I turned and ran, the sound of the zipper still rasping behind me as I threw the door open and bolted down the hallway. I didn't look back, the heavy door slamming shut behind me with a metallic thud. My boots slipped on the slick tile as I sprinted down the hallway, the fluorescent lights overhead flickering like they were about to burn out. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, and my legs felt like they could give out at any moment. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Whatever was behind me, I didn't want to see it. I threw open the door to the security office and stumbled inside, locking it behind me with shaking hands. My back hit the wall, and I slid down to the floor, gasping for air. The hum of the monitors filled the room, and for a moment, it felt like I'd escaped. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I leaned forward and rewound the morgue footage. The timestamp read 2:43 a.m., just minutes ago. I watched myself enter the room, the camera capturing every detail. The gurney, the bag twitching, the zipper sliding down, the body inside moving. But then the footage cut to static. For a brief second, the screen was completely black. When the image returned, the gurney was empty. I rewound it again and again, but it was always the same. The zipper moved, the body shifted, and then nothing. The gurney disappeared from the footage like it had never been there. My stomach twisted, and I pushed away from the monitors. I grabbed my jacket and keys, stumbled out of the office, and didn't stop moving until I was in my car. I didn't care if I'd left anything behind. I wasn't coming back. I quit the hospital the next day, told Barry I wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be returning. I didn't give him any details. What could I say? That a body bag had unzipped itself and whispered my name? He wouldn't believe me. For a while, I thought leaving would fix everything. I even managed to find a new job, working overnight security at the mall. It was a slower pace, a lot less stressful. Just me, empty stores, and janitors sweeping the food court. I told myself the nightmare was over. But it wasn't. It was my second week on the job. The mall was quiet, just the faint hum of vending machines and the distant echo of footsteps from the janitor on the other side of the building. I made my way through the dimly lit corridors, past the dark storefronts and lifeless mannequins. I was halfway through my shift when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a piece of trash lying near the entrance to the maintenance hallway, but when I crouched down, my stomach dropped. A zipper pull, small, shiny, and identical to the ones on the morgue body bags. My hand trembled as I picked it up, the cold metal biting into my fingers. I stared at it, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. Then I heard the noise, a soft metallic rasp. I turned slowly, my breath hitching. The maintenance hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit by a flickering overhead light. At the far end of the hall, something moved. The black plastic of a body bag dragged across the floor, its zipper partially open. The bag twitched, like something inside was shifting. My heart pounded as the zipper slid open another inch. The metallic rasp echoed down the hallway, and the plastic crinkled as something inside pushed against it. Slow, deliberate, like it was testing the bag's limits. My breath hitched, and a drop of sweat rolled down my temple, despite the cold air pressing against me. I stepped back, swallowing the lump in my throat. Whatever was in that bag, it wanted out. And then the bag stopped moving. But the top of it shifted slightly, as though something inside was breathing. The silence pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. Then a shadow moved behind the bag, and I didn't wait to see what it was. I dropped the zipper pull and ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the security office. I locked the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor, my chest heaving. I told myself I'd quit tomorrow, find another job, something during the day, somewhere safe. But deep down, I knew the truth. I could change jobs, I could move to another town, but it wouldn't matter. The zipper would always find me,